So Dungeons & Dragons and other role-playing games, but Dungeons & Dragons is the one I've been playing the longest, is a game that exercises not just your tactical and your right brain thinking, but creativity and your left brain thinking.
First and foremost, it was like the primary mover in how I thought about the world and how I handled conflict and how I dealt with a puzzle, how I dealt with a situation that was new to me. And
to me, Dungeons & Dragons is a great experience for me and my friends to get together and actually hang out and connect in a way that's different from a lot of the other ways that you see today. Like, say you go to a movie. Well, that's great, you experience a movie, but in Dungeons & Dragons, you get to act as a community with your friends and create your own story together.
Dan Chapman. I run Dungeons & Dragons Adventures League here at Pandemonium Games, Wednesdays and Saturdays.
My name's Matthew Mooney, and I'm a religion teacher at Divine Child High School.
Hello, my name is William Dunn.
I guess definition-wise, it's a collaborative storytelling game.
So the way I approach the game as a player actually depends on the kind of character I'm playing.
For me, the dungeon mastering is what I do a lot, which is really exercises the creative thinking a lot. And it's an interesting combination of not just a game, but also kind of like a performance too.
So when I was younger, I liked the dice rolling component and I liked the narrative elements of it, but I didn't want to take on a character role. I wanted to just play it safe and be like, I'm a damage dealing armored character who doesn't talk a lot. One
of the first characters I ever played was actually a ranger. So I was more focused on like, oh, okay, so I'm gonna shoot things because it was my first time and I didn't put any points into charisma, which is the stat you need to talk to people.
I have a lot of weird little social hang-ups that it's hard to tell because I'm in my environment here. But when I'm not in the midst of a game store rolling dice, I'm actually reserved as heck. And for me, the Dungeon Master aspect, actually running the game, gives me the ability to have charge of something that I feel confident about. The Adventures League that we're running here, with lots of tables and lots of people I'm in charge of, is not something I could have imagined myself doing 5 years ago. It's given me a level of confidence that is unusual, and it's benefited me not just socially, but also like professionally, because I'm able to use that as an excuse to say, okay, I've led groups of people. If at a convention I ran a group of like 50 people, I can say I've done that.
As I've gotten older and I'm looking at it, I see that my role in the game with my students is more as a facilitator. Like, I want to play the game, but I also want to help them. And so if by taking on some more creative elements, it helps them to be more creative, then I have to, like I said, check myself at the door. So I was playing a character that doesn't speak and only writes through, like, I only will write notes. But that character gained an ability to speak telepathically, so I affected a Russian accent. Just because. There was no reason other than I felt like some kids at the table were reticent to really get involved, and they weren't expecting it at all.
My favorite aspect of a typical game is actually the things that happen that are unplanned. Like when you sit down at the table, the dungeon master, or the person basically running the game, usually has an idea of what he wants to do for the session. Like, okay, we're all going to sit down, and you guys, by the end of the session, you'll be in this dungeon. Most of the time it happens, sometimes you get nowhere near it because the dungeon master comes up with this one NPC. It's like, oh yeah, this NPC is just walking by. He owns a bookstore. And you spend the next 3 hours trying to figure out what books he has. Can we rob him? Is he the enemy? Is he the big bad evil guy? Is he the guy that we need to kill? You don't have what's supposed to happen. Like, you have a goal. You have an end goal that you want to meet. But you don't have all the steps in between. So you have to improvise your way into that. You have to problem solve. You have to always be able to say yes to whatever's going to happen, which is a huge benefit going into the acting world.
It teaches discourse instead of debate. And I think that the being able to distinguish between the two is really important for students, because we're taught so often by culture that, like, you have to win. When you have a conversation with somebody, you have to win. And if you're not winning, then you're losing. And D&D, it's not about winning and losing necessarily. It's about working and making something fit the narrative. And though you have your own goals, if it's played well, and I think that there is a right way to play and a wrong way to play. If it's played well, then it's a collaborative effort, and that's what it should be. And to me, those are the games that are the most fun.
We have players that I can actually tell. I mean, they go to therapy, and they've been sent here to to work on social problems. And I can tell with the players over time the improvements they've made. Some of them are young kids. We have a couple of like 13, 14, 15-year-old kids that, I've seen improvements over time.
And I really do think that anything that can help you work through a difficult patch can be a form of therapy if it's framed properly.
For social awkwardness or feeling alone or depression, I think it could be a great use of your time because it allows you to communicate with another human being. Communication is the biggest key of D&D.
I think that D&D can be a great opportunity and a great vehicle to build those social interactions that children and even adults sometimes you can't build any other way. You can't just walk into a room and start a relationship with people. But in D&D, you walk into a tavern and there you go, you're off and running.
You have people that may have issues with social anxiety, that have a spotlight that is not too bright. They take their turns with the spotlight. So you have someone that may have difficulty speaking up that has a moment to talk.
You fundamentally have to like be someone else in this game, and even if you model that person after yourself, it's not about you, and so that ability to take a step back, I think is a must when you play the game.
If someone who may be on the autism spectrum or something like that, it can actually be used as a therapy tool. We've had people talk about it before, and I've seen articles about it. So, I'm excited about the fact that, like, some of the people that have come to us, I have seen benefits, and that's, for me, that's kind of really an exciting thing to see people benefit.
As a new player coming into Dungeons & Dragons, I guess my greatest advice to you would be find a group with 1 or 2 people who have played before.
So for those that aren't actually able to go somewhere, there are online avenues to play, like through Fantasy Grounds or Roll20 or other similar systems.
It's got a community that's very welcoming, and I would encourage people to play with their friends, but don't be afraid to try to jump into a couple of different games. As long as you're playing with people that you know, or that you're in a space that's a safe space or whatever. And if people spent the level of time and care acting in their day-to-day lives the way that they do in D&D, they'd probably be better people too. As long as they're not, chaotic evil.